Welcome to Table to Stage. Jordan Worma here with the call at Dunkin' Donuts Park. The Yard Goats have a runner on base and a dangerous bat at the plate, hanging on to a slim 4-3 lead. They're looking to tack on some insurance runs here. The pitcher is shaking off another sign from his battery mate, and now it looks like he's got the pitch he wants. He sets, here's the delivery.
The pitch is swung out and a high fly ball struck well towards right. Irvini back to the track, he's at the wall, and it's gone! Nelson Molina hits one out of the lot, out into the Hartford night, and he tacks on two more for the Goats. Two big runs, and it's now a 6-3 ball game in favor of Hartford.
There's something about a home run that can really bring out the kid in a baseball fan. Even when I watch a game on TV, sometimes I'll just mute the TV broadcast and I'll listen to the radio play-by-play. The Molina home run call was from Jeff Dooley, the voice of the Yard Goats, and he's been a mainstay from the franchise in its previous incarnations. He is currently the director of broadcast and media operations for the Yard Goats, and he does some college basketball play-by-play as well. Now, sports doesn't always get high marks for creativity, especially from an arts-minded crowd, but when it comes to describing a visual game for people that can't actually watch it, and for making each game a uniquely entertaining experience, creativity is a vital component. So even if you're not a sports fan, which is perfectly reasonable, I think you'll enjoy Jeff's take on how he uses his voice to paint vivid images in other people's minds. If you're not subscribed to the pod, you should definitely do that, whether it's iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, whatever. Subscribing will ensure that you always have the most up-to-date episodes ready when they drop. Some of those services even let you rate and review the pod, so take advantage of that. It'll make you feel good to drop a 5-star rating on this piece. And if I read your review on the pod, you'll get an exclusive Table to Stage sticker. What? A sticker? I know. Just try to keep your voice down. It's too much excitement for one person to handle. I could also use some feedback from you. I'm trying to decide on some merchandising. Table to Stage the breakfast cereal. Table to Stage the toilet paper. Table to Stage the shark repellent. Or maybe something actually practical. So head over to tabletostagepod.com and complete the survey for a deep discount on merch down the road. So as a baseball fan, I think the Mets still count as a professional team. Maybe not. I was excited to be able to speak with Jeff and to get my first look at D&D Park. It's a really nice piece of baseball perfection in Hartford. It's a Major League feel stadium in a AA setting. We recorded actually in one of the private boxes, so I had a really great view of the field and of the Hartford skyline, and I'm really looking forward to finally getting to a game there next season. So here's Jeff Dooley, the voice of the Yard Goats.
In 1998, I actually brokered the deal between the club, at the time it was the New Britain Rockcats, and the radio station, which was a small signal, WNTY AM 990 in Southington, Connecticut. And that's what brought me to the Nutmeg State and just finished my 21st season as the voice of this franchise. So it's a perfect spot to be. My wife and 2 kids are here now, and Connecticut has been home, and it's been home for a long time now.
Yeah. So you say voice of the franchise, and since this isn't necessarily a sports show, I don't know how many listeners are big sports fans. So what do you mean by voice of the franchise? It's not just the Yard Goats. There's
right.
a history that
Sure. For many years, and the Hartford Yard Goats, even though it's new to a lot of people, and we've got a tremendous ballpark in downtown Hartford, this franchise is the longest continuously operated sports franchise in the state of Connecticut, western Massachusetts.
Wow.
It goes all the way back to Bristol, actually. It goes back to Bristol, and some of the Hall of Famers, Wade Boggs, Jim Rice, played in Bristol. The Bristol Red Sox between 1973 and 1982, and then they moved to New Britain in 1983. And between 83 and 95, they played at Beehive Field, and then moved into New Britain Stadium in 96. I came on board in 98, a couple of years later, when they switched affiliations from the Red Sox to the Minnesota Twins. And then the city of Hartford put together this absolute gem for our fans, and we moved into Dunkin' Donuts Park in the 2017 season. So we've just finished our second season playing in downtown. But there's a long history with so many guys and Hall of Famers and Major League All-Stars that have played with this franchise, and it's it's something special, I think, for the people of this state to grow up around some of these guys and to look back and say, wow, I saw this guy play when he was at the AA level in the Eastern League, and now he's in the major leagues. We had a couple of guys in the World Series right now that played at this ballpark. So it's a cool place to be, and it's been a special I think affiliation with our fans, at least since they joined the Eastern League back in the early 70s.
Oh, wow. All right, so it was the Twins for a long time in New Britain. It's the Rockies now, right?
Correct.
Okay. So in changing from Major League affiliates through all those years, has it changed your relationship with the ball club at any point, or are you're the voice of the franchise and it's been consistent the whole time? Yeah,
well, actually, I've changed a couple of different things. I'm on my third ownership group, so it's kind of the running joke when you buy the team, it comes with the broadcaster. I'm very fortunate because it doesn't always work that way, but I've always worked for just tremendous owners. Joe Bouzas, who is the first guy that owned the team going back to the Bristol Red Sox. He's the guy that really brought baseball to Connecticut. And he owned that team for a lot of years, made the transition from Bristol to New Britain, and then ended up selling that franchise to William Dowling, who was a former vice president of the New York Yankees, and I got a chance to work with Bill for several years, and he did a ton of advertising and really promoted the team in this market, and put, I think, baseball on the map, really, in Hartford. Early 70s, I should say the 70s and early 80s, minor league baseball wasn't anything like it is now. And when Bill bought the team in 2000, he really invested in making sure that this was something that folks did in the summertime. And it's amazing. George Springer, now a big star with the Houston Astros. Springer grew up in Connecticut, in New Britain. His favorite team was not the Yankees or the Red Sox. It was the Rockcats. And it's amazing now because he's one of the best players in the game. He was the 2017 World Series MVP. Yeah. And he's a guy that came through and went to clinics when he was a kid, knew some of the players, always talked about his favorite player ever being Torrey Hunter, who was actually the center fielder my first year broadcasting baseball in New Britain back in 1998. So it's and then obviously the team changed hands again, and Josh Solomon bought the team with his brother and sister, and they own the Yard Goats now and made the transition to Hartford. And I couldn't ask to be around better people. I mean, tremendous, understands that what our fans want and how important that this franchise is to not only baseball but the community. So I've been very fortunate to work for great owners that understand that it's important to have a good broadcast as well, and have someone that's going to be kind of your voice to get out there and preach the Yard Goats gospel. That's someone that they have some trust in. So I've been very fortunate through the years. Yeah, that's amazing to be able to keep a run like that going through so many different groups. How did you first develop an interest in sports? Because not everybody does. Maybe kids play Little League, they play soccer, whatever, and they grow up with it. But what was your path to the sports life like? I always loved it. I loved baseball. I loved all sports, but there was something special about baseball. I played as a kid into Babe Ruth in high school and wasn't very good, and realized that the only way that I could do this and be around professional baseball would be working in the industry as a broadcaster. Would be a pretty cool thing. It's a fun way to get into every game. I loved the Red Sox as a kid, and and obviously at that point envisioned myself playing first base at Fenway someday. But as you get a little bit older, you get to be a little bit more realistic that's not going to happen. And actually, my senior year in high school, look at my senior yearbook, and it says goal professional sports broadcasting. So, and there's a lot of folks in this field that tell me that, Jeff, we didn't get into this till later on, but I knew right away. I knew when I was in high school that this is what I wanted to do. I had a strong passion for it, and I went to a small school, Catholic school on Sebago Lake, St. Joseph's College, which is just outside of Portland on Sebago Lake in Windham, Maine. And I knew as a freshman I could get on the air as a broadcaster freshman year. And it was a relationship. I'd never forget the first time I went on. I was on, someone had I think it was a hip-hop show at the time. And I just went on and gave the scores. They said, yeah, Jeff, we'll put you on. Just give the Red Sox score, the Yankees score. Yeah. And then ended up getting a sports show my freshman year, and got real lucky. There were some transitions going on at the station. They saw my passion and understood that I like to work hard to get things done, and they actually made me sports director of the station. So we made sure we got our men's and women's basketball teams on the college radio station, and we also got our baseball and softball games on. And then my real break came in my junior season. The basketball team was really, really good, and the coach actually signed a commercial radio deal with a small station in Portland, but they hired a professional voice to do the play-by-play. They hired me actually just because I knew the kids as a color commentator. So I'm learning immediately from a pro, and they kind of treated me like a pro at that point. Now, 30-second commercials. It wasn't college radio where you could go longer. 30 seconds have to be 30 seconds because people are paying now for that sponsorship. So that was a big, big break for me, and it was at St. Joe's that I really knew that I wanted to do this for a career. Yeah.
How did you learn the craft of broadcasting? Was it something that you studied, or was it just you jumped in front of the microphone and learned as you
went? Have to do it. You have to do it. It is a craft, like you said, and I talk to people all the time that want to broadcast, and I mean, it sounds fun. You watch the game and you got a pretty good seat and it's your favorite team, but I always say you need to get out there and do it. So it doesn't matter if you're at a Little League game, a high school game, or you're sitting in the stands at Fenway Park or at Yankee Stadium. If you want to be a broadcaster, the best thing you can do to improve on that craft is to broadcast. You need to just get out there and do the game. So that was something that, and for young broadcasters, sometimes it's early to tell. It's like you see legs. You get your legs on the air. And it's important to get the experience and learn to describe things, especially on radio, differently each time. But the important thing is the reps, and you're going to be much better 5 years from now than you are right now, and that's the case. I mean, if I were to play you stuff when I first started in this business, not that I'm a great broadcaster now, but it'd be much different than what you'd hear on the radio today. Yeah. So how did you first? What was your first play-by-play experience like? Was it something? Was it what you expected? Was it a bit of a surprise? What surprised you about it? Oh, that's cool. I haven't been asked this question in a long, long time. But yeah, going back to college, I'll never forget. It was a basketball game, and we were running late, and it was a student, and I was with an upperclassman they had put together with me, and I just kind of looked at him, and I was always under the impression that the broadcast. The game would wait on the broadcast, and I'm saying, well, they're not going to start without us, right? And the kid looked at me and said, are you kidding? They don't even know this game's on the radio. So here I am thinking I'm this big shot, and because, you watch the games on national TV, and so much of it is run because of television, and I was thinking, they're not going to start without us. They're going to wait for that light to go on, right? Exactly. And that wasn't the case. But we did get on before tip-off, which was nice, and it was I just did color commentary because I was the young freshman at that point, and I think they had me with a junior or senior, but it was a fun time, and it was just something that I knew right away that this is what I wanted to do. And I had a sports show. It was called Inside the World of Sports, and I actually got a couple of national sponsors I got Coca-Cola one year, Pepsi another year, and
I've heard of those.
and Subway, and it was cool because college kids are always hungry, right?
Oh,
and
yeah.
we did a quiz at the we'd have quizzes throughout the show, and you'd win a 6-pack of Coke or Pepsi and a Subway sandwich. So I mean, as a college student, you can't. I had to mix it up though because I was giving the quiz, I guess, every time at like 20 past the hour. So word got out. People were tuning in at about 18 past.
You get a nice rating spike at the same time.
Yeah,
every day.
exactly. But it was a blast, and I loved interviewing people, and just looking back at it now, I did with how big the Patriots have gotten. It's unbelievable. I'm from Rhode Island, and they trained at Bryant College for several years, and I just remember hanging out in the parking lot, waiting with my recorder, and just. I remember one time I was hiding behind a tree and Drew Bledsoe came out and I went up and introduced there was no shame. I mean, Drew, I'm a college kid. I have a show and he was great. He's absolutely, I'll do an interview. Dick McPherson, who was the coach at the time of the Patriots, went on the show. So we had, we had some pretty good guests on that show for just a small little college station
awesome.
in Wyndham, Maine.
A little bit of guerrilla journalism
Yeah,
there, right?
That's right. Whatever works. But that's when I really knew that wow, can you imagine if I actually got a credential and got a chance to go in and talk to these people and not try to get thrown out? I said, I'd be in pretty good shape then.
So you have mentioned that you did play-by-play and color commentary early on. So what is the difference between those two jobs? Because I know almost every broadcast has at least those two people on the air.
Well, technically speaking, the play-by-play is the guy or girl that talks about what is happening, and the color commentary person explains why. I mean, that's the best way, I think, to describe that. So whether it's basketball, whether the guy's moving down the court, where the ball is passed, if a shot goes up, if it's blocked, if the ball's turned over. With baseball, there's a drive up the middle, how hard was the ball, those type of things. And then the color commentator comes in and talks about, well, for basketball, for instance, they should have shifted defenses here. This is a matchup that this team's not going to like because they went small here, and this big guy's going to hold the defense back.
Sure.
Things like that. And then with baseball, talking about a guy really struggling, getting that breaking pitch over for strikes, or a guy that's in a slump. So that's, by the definition, I guess, that's what the difference is between the play-by-play person and the color person as well.
Okay, and what is it that separates somebody who becomes a great play-by-play person and somebody who becomes a great color commentary voice? Is there a different skill set for those two people, or is it just it's overlapping and day-to-day?
Most of the jobs at the professional level, at the major league level, the color commentators are former players or coaches.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say 90, probably close to 99%. I'm trying to think of someone that, there's a couple of radio teams in the major leagues that, and then I do the broadcast here with Dan Lovallo, and, Dan and I played baseball, but not obviously at that level, and we both do play-by-play in color, and you can make it work. I think for good radio, as long as you're doing your research and you're talking to the players and talking to the coaches and about what's going on, and you can certainly make that work. But especially on television, I think most of the color commentators are former players because they can really get into the X's and O's of what's going on and why this is happening. And for the play-by-play person, really just describing the action or calling what's happening simultaneously as it is. I always suggest to young broadcasters that are starting out is that they get into the play-by-play role.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult if you're not a name to get color commentating jobs. It's just very, especially if you haven't, and even if you've played. I mean, most of us have played at some level, but to get a job and for a pro team or even a lot of college teams, and you're not a big name, it's really, really challenging. So those that want to get into the business on that side, and I remember Mike Gorman told me this longtime Celtics broadcaster. I met him at a convention in Providence back when I was in school, And he said that. He said that the jobs you want to go after are going to be play-by-play jobs. There's not going to be a lot of color jobs out there. And, Tommy Heinsohn, he's been doing Celtics games for a million years with Mike. So it's, they're certainly right on that.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about the actual process of doing a play-by-play for a game, because sports, just in general, is a visual entertainment. It's not something that you can just close your eyes and know what's going on unless somebody's describing it in great detail. So part of the play-by-play, or at least good play-by-play, has to be using language specific enough to actually be able to create an image in somebody's head. How do you go about doing that in a way that keeps it fresh, keeps it entertaining, keeps it interesting for somebody who is not able to actually see what you're seeing, but still wants to be able to enjoy that game?
Well, some people for sure do it better than others. Vin Scully, obviously a broadcasting legend and Hall of Famer. I mean, I'm not sure that there's anybody that's described baseball like him. And not to mention, he could kind of go back and forth and weave stories in and out of his play-by-play, which can be very, very much traveling. He did it by himself. And he was obviously so talented that they put him on the television side, too, for a couple of innings. And he worked alone in that aspect as well. Not that you want to start comparing people to Vin Scully, because that's difficult in its own right. But I think the most important thing is the score, and I always talk about that to young broadcasters, especially when you're starting out. You're not doing Red Sox games, you're not doing Yankee games.
Right.
The people that are tuning in are probably not tuning in right when you go on for the pregame show as much as you'd love, and turning you off when you finish your postgame show. So they're periodically checking in on the score. So it's important to give the score, I would say, first and foremost. But on radio, you really want to set the scene. Basketball is so up-tempo. You want to follow the ball. You don't want to obviously get too ahead of yourself. But there's one thing that you can't fake, and that's the crowd noise. Right. So you need to be pretty close, because if you're a few seconds behind, the crowd's going to be rude to you because they're going to cheer, and you're going to be. It's almost like you missed the play.
Yeah.
So you've got to be spot on with that, and it can be a challenge with the ball moving up and down the court. Generally, and I do college basketball. I've done it on radio, and now I do it on television on ESPN3. So it is different. You have more leeway when it's a television game, because the color commentator, I basically say, talk as much as you want, just get out when the shot goes up so I can call the shot. That's the only thing. You don't want to have him talking when the shot goes up.
Yeah.
But I don't mind if they talk even when the ball's in the front court. That being said, on radio, the challenge in basketball is that what I'll tell my color broadcasting partner is, when the ball goes by midcourt, probably wrap up what you're trying to say. So sometimes they've only got, it depends on how quick these teams are, but sometimes less than 10 seconds to get it in there. Because when the ball's by midcourt, I need to start setting up what's happening and where the direction the ball is going in the court. Are they working it outside? Have they hit a pass to the middle? They dump it down to the post. And the other thing I'd suggest too is that they've got to get out in basketball when a team puts on a full court press, because now the listeners need to know that they've just changed defenses. Now is the guard going to have trouble bringing the ball up the floor?
Right.
So those are things that can be challenging on the basketball side, radio, television. In baseball, and I still think baseball, you and I were talking before you go on, there's something romantic about baseball and radio, and it's going back to, I think, many of our childhoods when you've got the game on the radio, even though the games are on television now. Yeah. But even with Echo and with some of these, our games are on iHeartRadio, so you can get the Yard Goats games anywhere in the world on your phone, at your barbecue. So it's really cool, I think, that we can kind of keep that radio tradition alive. And to get into the nuts and bolts of the broadcast, I think it's important for a broadcaster to paint the picture. I always talk about the weather and the kind of feeling in the ballpark. Is the crowd into it today? Is it an early arriving crowd? Is it a late crowd? What's the pulse? Mm-hmm. Who's pitching? What type of energy is in the game today? And then when there's a ground ball hit, it's on television it's different. You really don't have to say a whole lot, or ground ball shortstop, or that one's in the air to left.
A lot of times they won't say anything anymore.
And sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll let the crowd do it.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's really no right or wrong, I think, with that. On television and on radio, I definitely think there is. You need to draw that entire picture. So there's a ground ball out to shortstop. Osborne to his left, makes the scoop, sets his feet, shifts the body, and throws to first base. Now, was the throw low, or was the throw right there?
Right.
Was it a close play at first base? I may say ground ball down the line, third base. Born into the backhands, got it, makes the throw behind the bag. Smith, a quick runner, here's the play.
Yeah.
So things like that where you're imagining, you don't want to just say ground ball, third base, and he's got it. And sometimes when you're on like a gazillion hours like we are, you're going to have, just like players, and I tell players this all the time, you may have a bad game. We're definitely going to have a bad broadcast sometime. I mean, you're not on 100%. I mean, you try to do that. I think with the experience, I mean, Dan and I have been on together for, I think, 16, 17 years, so we know each other extremely well, when to come in, when not to come in. And I think that just goes with time, working with somebody, and he's a tremendous broadcaster. He's done baseball and basketball, so, we kind of read each other pretty well. And, you obviously have to know about the team, and we're talking to the pitching coaches and what guys throw, and if someone's on a limit, if we've got a major league rehab and so on and so forth. But I think it's important to describe, and, if a ball's hit in the air, we'll talk about, I mean, there's so many cool nooks and crannies here at Dunkin' Donuts Park. We've got that kind of a small triangle out in right center field, and if the ball's hit to that spot, I may say, and the ball's captured by Hicks right in front of the 383 marker in right center field. So people that can envision Dunkin' Donuts Park know that ball was caught just to the right of the Trinity Health sign.
Sure.
One that shot into the stands. The other great thing about this ballpark is that you have the ability now to catch a home run. In my years with New Britain, the 16-foot fences, you weren't bringing a ball back.
Right.
Here it's an 8-foot fence, and with the tremendous athletes that we see play for both the Yard Goats and the opposition, you got a guy going back. So I'll say Wes Rogers breaks back. He's got some room, leaps in the air, into the stands he goes, and then you wait, you hear the crowd reaction, and we've got the TV monitors in front of us as well, or he's got it, or it's a home run.
Right. Oh, that's great. Those little details that you kind of stuck in a couple, like the backhand at third base or the throw behind the bag, those really help paint a picture because you can visualize. If you just say you picks the ball up,
there's a million ways. Was it the forehand? Was it the backhand?
Just that little, you can picture that whole play just from that backhand.
And the cool thing we can do now, too, is with the monitors in front of us, they basically give us a television feed, so we can see the mannerisms that they're going through. So if someone's squinting, if someone's got something in his eye, I mean, we can so we try to bring that listener into the game. And the best compliment that we can get from a listener is, Jeff, I was listening to the game last night. I really felt that I was there. Like, you put me in the front row. And, I mean, there's no better feeling as a broadcaster when you get an email from a fan or someone that said they heard the game, and I felt like I was there. And that's really cool. We appreciate the ones that do that. But it's important, I think, to really draw the picture. People tease me all the time about I get into the colors. I always describe the uniforms because we have a lot of blind people that listen to us.
Okay.
We do. We've got a ton of people, and I didn't know that at first. And then I went and I spoke to a group, and they told me that they tune in all the time, and they're like, "We really, you do a good job describing like." Because we have like 6 different uniforms that we wear, so I'll talk about the grays and matching up and things like that. So they'll tease me in the office a lot, but that's kind of one of the things that I like to do now is talk about the uniforms. And if a guy's got mud caked all over his jersey, I think that's important to mention, and we'll throw a little joke in about the club he's going to be working overtime tonight to try and wash that thing out for the day game tomorrow. But description's important. I think the feel, the atmosphere, the weather sometimes will change during the game. Lots of times it's not so much the temperature, but we might get some rain that's moving in. Obviously, with the ability now with the forecast of the meteorologists, they're pretty good now, where we can say, we might be up against some stuff. There's some rain heading this way. So as much information that we can provide to the listener, I think is is what we're trying to do here at Dunkin' Donuts Park with the Yard Goats.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned being able to talk to the pitching coaches or the managers and the players, and I'm going to ask because I've always been curious about this. How can you tell what pitch is being thrown every time? Because they're moving so fast.
You know what helps? It's a good question. We've got the radar out there. We've got the speed pitch in the outfield. So I'll go through either with the pitcher or the pitching coach what the guys throw.
Yeah.
So they'll say, okay, it's almost like a cheat sheet. So if you know a guy's fastball, slider, curve change. So if your fastball is going to be in your mid 90s,
right.
You're going to have a slider could be high 80s. And then you've got a changeup that's going to be low 80s, and then your curveball could be even the high 70s.
So it's not so much tracking the actual movement of the ball from the booth. It's mostly about speed.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can see some of that stuff.
Well, on a big break-in ball, yeah.
Yeah, you can see that, especially if you know that a guy's early on going to attack here, or he's just going to work fastballs in.
Right.
Sometimes it's difficult. Was that a 4-seam fastball? Was that a 2-seam fastball? But generally, it's, sometimes we'll try to take an educated guess. We don't have anything here that pops up on the screen that was a slider.
Right.
I know some of the big league ballparks have that. That might be something we do down the road. That'd be pretty cool, I think. But yeah, I mean, we'll definitely, it'll be an educated guess, at worst, because we do talk to the pitching coaches and we know what guys throw. And especially if there's a guy that's got a knuckleball or something like that, he's going to break out. We need to make sure we know about that. We did face a knuckleballer, Jansen, last couple of years with the Mets organization. So you've got a few of those guys in the league. But yeah, as long as you do your homework and you a lot of that stuff, you're right. I'd say probably 95% of the time.
Okay, so you have done lots of baseball, lots of basketball, and I mean, I'm a big baseball fan, so I will never say that it's a slow game, but it is more of a deliberately paced game than like a basketball game is, where it's constantly up and down the court. So you have a little bit more time, I guess, to kind of get your thoughts in order for a baseball game, whereas basketball, it's reactive the whole time. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. That being said, sometimes I scratch my head. One thing that is an absolute no-no, and everybody does it, myself included, is miss pitches. I mean, as a broadcaster, you hate to miss a pitch, because when you're thinking about this on radio, what is the most important thing? Is the pitch. Because when the pitch is coming, anything can happen. Is it a pitch out? Is it a strikeout? Right. Is it a home run? Is it a ground ball to double play? The biggest thing is the pitch. I can't be in the middle of telling a story. I can't be in the middle of doing something where I miss the pitch, yet it always happens.
Right.
You try to limit it, but the reality is every broadcaster, besides probably Scully, misses pitches. And it's just something that happens. So that being said, yeah, you're right, it's slow, but it's not as slow as one might think. I mean, I think the good broadcasters can slow it down almost. The game does move at a much quicker rate than the Major League game. I will say that.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. We've got pitch clocks and everything.
Now, right?
That they move it along. Obviously, at the Major League level, we're seeing the limits to the pitching changes and conferences on the mound. Even when the shortstop comes in to talk to the pitcher, they've really limited that stuff pretty good. But I would say that the game moves at a pretty good clip, but nothing in terms of the play-by-play, back-and-forth action like basketball or hockey.
Yeah, so what is the difference for you in just the way you have to prepare and be ready to call these games that are such different paces? I mean, is it the same skill set, or do you have to adjust that?
Yeah, the prep's the same. The preparation for baseball is doing the notes and learning a little about the team, and I think getting into the pace, your pace is important, how much to give. A lot of the broadcasters, I think, can get wrapped up into the statistics. Mm-hmm. We're given so much information. I mean, the guys that get up to this level, they're 2 steps away from the big leagues.
Yeah.
I mean, every guy that you see here, there's been 100 stories written about him. You just throw him in Google, and you can get everything that you want. You're always talking to the broadcaster before the game about unique stories. If a guy's played with a guy that's maybe been in the major leagues, if someone's a relative of somebody. We had Tim Tebow here last year. That was a circus within itself. So there's just so much going on that you can incorporate into a broadcast. I'd rather tell the stories. Bring the players come to life, show their human side as opposed to, obviously I'll give the basics, the batting average, the home runs, the RBIs, but to get into the WAR and some of the other statistics that are available that some fans quite honestly think are fascinating with all the analytics that are going on these days. Maybe I should do more of that, but I just think it's more important to bring the game to life. That's kind of what we've tried to do here. And at the basketball, where you're moving back and forth so much, I mean, there's just not a whole lot of time for that, basketball and radio. And on the television side, it's more of a predetermined broadcast where you're talking about, all right, who are the guys we're going to highlight, and that has to be done because they obviously have to get B-roll, video of these guys while they're warming up. So you basically have your stories set before the game comes in. You always have the C&D stuff as well, just in case the game gets ugly or you've got more time to fill. But I'd say generally the way that you prep as a broadcaster, it's pretty much the same.
Now, what about the difference between television and radio in the way you go about describing the action? Because when you've got, the person you're describing it to is watching the same thing you are, as opposed to not being able to see it. Does that change the actual language you use?
Yeah, I was always taught, just try to put the caption underneath what you're seeing on the video, so talk less. Yeah. And I'm a talker. I think for the games, and I've done a bunch of games on television. For the Hawks games, I do them all on ESPN3, but I've done a bunch of games. I did a game on Fox Sports North for baseball, FSN, back in Minnesota, and it was a lot of fun, but I think I'm a talker, so I think I almost talk too much for the TV side. I mean, sometimes less is more, and just kind of backing out. I still think you need to describe, like we said, a ground ball to short. Mm-hmm. Here's Gagne. Or in the air to left, Benintendi goes back, just so you're letting people know who's making the play. Sure. People looking down, or they might hear, I still think you need to say something, but there's some great broadcasters that, they get out quick and they just let the crowd do the talking.
Sure. Now, who do you look at as the broadcasters that are really setting the bars these days?
Dan Schulman is outstanding.
Okay.
Dan Schulman is really, really good, and he's just so versatile. He could do basketball, he can do baseball on radio and television. You don't miss a beat. Gary Cohen, who a long time had been on radio for the Mets and is now on the TV side. He's another fabulous broadcaster. John Shambi, who is on radio, I think, for ESPN right now, doing the Major League playoffs. He's outstanding as well. I think he's a radio guy first. Does a tremendous job describing the action. And he does the television as well, but I think he's just absolutely tremendous on radio. And then my brother-in-law, Don Orsillo, who is the longtime voice of the Red Sox on NESN, he's out in San Diego now. So he's been someone that certainly I watch closely and send stuff to every year and try to ask him how to get better with my craft. But and he's done a lot of national games. He did the playoffs on TBS this year. He does a lot of games on Fox television nationally. So those are a few guys out there. I mean, there's so many tremendous broadcasters. Corey Provost, who does the Twins games on radio, is someone that's gotten to be pretty friendly with me the last several years, and I think he's a tremendous radio broadcaster as well. So there's some guys out there that are just really, really good at what they do.
Yeah, it's really, I think, an underappreciated art form to be able to really engage an audience in something that is such a visual medium.
It's
to be able to bring them into the game.
Yeah, you try to do that, and the good ones can do that for sure. They just describe it. They have that relationship with their listeners where it's almost like when they smile, the person can see that through the radio. And I mean, that's what you're trying to get across as a radio broadcaster.
Now, when you were coming up, were there certain broadcasters when you were a youth that maybe influenced your style, or somebody you tried to emulate when you got behind a mic on your own?
I think, and Joe Castiglione, who's gotten to be a pretty good friend now, he longtime voice of the Red Sox, and I've sent stuff to him now the last several years. And, Joe's someone that I listened to when I was in college and in high school, just because he's done it for so long in Boston. Going back, probably before I wanted to broadcast, Johnny Most, the legendary voice of the Celtics. He was someone that had all of New England hooked. People would turn down the television and turn on the radio just because he was such a homer for the Celtics. It was, if you put your hand on Larry Bird, you were, you knocked him out. It was just there was no halfway with him. He was just you either loved the Celtics or he hated you. He was just one of those unbelievable voices. So there's and then obviously when you get into the business, you meet different folks that can kind of help you along. But there are many broadcasters out there for sure. Bob Costas was a guy that I really liked as a kid, and I thought he was very versatile. Obviously, to do the World Series at a young age on television, he's tremendous. And a lot of people get critical of Joe Buck, and I mean, you can say what you want. For me, he's a pro. He really is. He's you might think he doesn't like your team, but he's very, very good at what he does.
Well, what's amazing to me about not just like Joe Buck, but all the broadcasters that are more national, they don't have one team they focus on. They've got to keep jumping back and forth.
Yeah, it's not the easiest thing in the world, the
different teams, the different sports, and they got to keep all that stuff. That's impressive.
And he does multiple sports. Yeah, he's excellent. And I always just roll my eyes when people say that, I can't stand, but you know what? That's what you get when you're on that stage, and I'm sure there are people out there who don't love me. I mean, it's just, but right, exactly. When you're out there and you're that person that, they're going to like you, they're not going to like you, but you definitely have to have those that are thinking about getting into this business. You have to have thick skin for sure.
Oh, of course.
You have to work hard, but you do have to have thick skin because not everyone is going to like you for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm so happy to finally be able to sit down with you and do this, and my first visit to Dunkin' Donuts Park. Are they going to rename it now that Dunkin' is dropping the donuts?
I don't know what they're going to do. I don't think they made a decision on that yet, but yeah, it's been a special place for our fans.
Signs are brand new. They're gonna.
I know. Yeah, 2-year stadium. So we'll see. But it's been a special place. It really has. To watch the team come out on a Monday night and to be down in the visiting clubhouse and to say this is unbelievable on a Monday night we're going to play in front of 7,000 people basically is pretty cool. So and then it's always sad when it comes to an end because you see the people with their cameras out taking pictures, for their holiday cards and things like that. But we try to keep as many events going as we can. We've got a lot of things going on in the off season to make sure that kind of keep the Yard Goats in the news and make sure we keep people coming to Dunkin' Donuts Park.
Sure, it's a beautiful park. It doesn't seem like a AA park at all to me. It's really nice.
And I'll steal this line because I didn't come up with it, but someone did tell me that this is more of a mini Major League ballpark than it is a big minor league ballpark. It is with the high definition. You've got the all LED screens, in right field, and you've got a gigantic, basically the largest, I think right now officially it's the second largest in all of minor league baseball, the big video board out in left field. It's a really cool spot. And then you've got, you see the backdrop of the city in the background. Yeah. And it's just so cool. You see a fly ball in the right field and you see the buildings in the background. I mean, it does look like a major league setup here. This is a tremendous place. My goal is to still obviously someday broadcast Major League Baseball. That was a goal when I first set out, and it still is. Hopefully I'll get there someday, but this is a great place to be if you have to be in the minors for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I would like to get to what I call front row center. It's a few rapid fire questions.
Okay.
And see if you can score well on this.
Oh boy, pressure's on.
One place everyone should visit before it's too late, other than Dunkin' Donuts Park.
You got me there. Other than Dunkin' Donuts Park, Rich Family Pavilion in West Hartford, where the Hartford Hawks play. That's my other job, so I'll give them a play. It's I always say it's the best kept secret in town. It is a fun place to bring the kids. You've got a terrific basketball men's and women's program. free parking. It's a really, really nice setup. I know a lot of folks I've talked to, they haven't been to games that the season's just about to kick off. So that's a fun spot to be for sure.
All right. The best moment or play that you've had a chance to call in your broadcasting career?
Well, for basketball, Bo Taylor hit a shot with a team down to send the Hartford Hawks into the playoffs, and then that was in Boston, Massachusetts. I was actually broadcasting the game with NBA Hall of Famer Casey Jones. So that was a special one for me.
Wow. Probably
Probably the biggest shot in school history. And then they went on to go to the NCAA tournament, which was really cool. And doing a tournament game in Baltimore, the winner would go to the NCAAs. They actually lost in the championship game, unfortunately, but I got a chance to broadcast that game. And with this franchise, I think opening day here was special to be on the air and say baseball has returned to Hartford. Was really, really special. I mean, that's something that I'll always have. Baseball was played here back in, the 1800s. Baseball, the National League, actually, as we know it now, was one of the charter members of the National League was one of the Hartford teams.
Oh,
and
I didn't
it's
know
the
that.
same National League,
wow.
yeah. So this was a major league city for 1 year, and then they moved to Brooklyn. The Hartford Dark Blues back in the day.
Wow.
So it was really, really cool the way that all happened. So for many years to lose baseball and to I know they said Mark Twain was a huge fan too of the Dark Blues. He used to go to all the games, so to wrap in the history, and then to leave and then come back. Very similar to Washington. Baseball was in Washington and then left and then came back with the Nationals. So that was a pretty cool setup here. Some of the the guys that you've covered and the sellouts and walk-off hits. Brendan Rodgers, who's a big upcoming star with the Colorado Rockies, had a walk-off home run here. So there's been several special ones and hopefully some good ones to come this year.
Oh, I'm sure. Your favorite movie?
Favorite movie, maybe Miracle. That's up there with the hockey
Olympic
movie.
one,
Yeah, the U.S. Yeah, we actually, my wife and I brought our kids up to Lake Placid a couple of weeks ago, so I get a chance to actually go in that arena.
Nice.
Was on the USA bench and in the USA locker room, and I was explaining to the kids the history behind that with what that 1980 Olympic hockey team did, and so that's definitely up there. I always love Field of Dreams.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
It's a great one. There's some pretty good sports ones out there, but I'd say those two are right at the top.
All right, the best meal you've ever had?
Best meal. Ooh, probably. I've had some good meals. Some steak meals, some a chowder pot.
Okay.
One time I think I crushed a 3-pound lobster. Yeah, that was a good one. There's been some pretty good ones. There's a place we like to go to, the Coast Guard House in Rhode Island. My wife and I like to go, and we've had some pretty good baked stuffed lobsters there. So there's been a few of them. I do like to eat.
Okay, all right. Now, I warned you when I got here that I'm a Mets fan. So the last question I have is, why can't the Mets win the World Series?
You got to get there first, right? You got to make some improvements. They've and I always I'll plug the minor leagues here if I could. I think it all starts with the minor league operations. You've got to do a really good job and acquire players with the draft, with signing some young free agents. And they've had some guys go through. Just unfortunately, some of the guys and they've gotten hit with the injury bug too. Some of those guys just haven't worked out. So just got to kind of keep their course. You hate seeing. When they were talking about trading Syndergaard and some of the, it's just I
can't take that.
Yeah, I mean he's a great young pitcher.
They just had a kid go down with Tommy John surgery this morning.
I tell you, they've got some players. They do have some players in the minor leagues. So just hang tight.
Oh yeah,
they will get there.
Peter Alonso's going to save everybody.
Yeah, Peter. We saw him here. He was just here a couple of years ago. So he's a star in the making. And God, I remember when David Wright came through the Eastern League. That seemed like yesterday. And I know everything that he had a nice ceremony to wrap up his career this year. So, but yeah, if you do things right with the draft and you can get some of these guys cheap, a lot of fans want the quick fix with the signing the free agents,
Sure,
and that's 50-50. That doesn't always work, and you can spend a gazillion dollars, and then you lose a draft pick, and then next thing you know, you're going to blow the whole thing up again.
Yeah.
So I
There's
think
been
that
a lot of Machado and Harper talk, and I think,
it doesn't always work. It really doesn't. I mean, the cool thing is that will put people in the seats, and if you go into games, you realize, oh wow, I'm going to see Bryce Harper tonight, or Machado, and take nothing away from that, but I'm not sure it's going to help you win immediately.
All right.
It always comes down to pitching. So if you've got good starting pitching, you've got a chance.
All right.
Everyone's talking about all these relievers of the starting pitching. Is it gonna, because of the bullpens have been used so much in the playoffs.
The Tampa model now, where they're starting their relievers.
I'm not sure that's going to work. I still think the most valuable player out there is that starting pitcher. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Well, those relievers, you can say what you want, but I mean, once they go through the lineup one time, it's different. That's why the starters, second time through the lineup, they're making different changes and varying looks and things like that. I'm not sure all the relievers do that as well.
That third and fourth pitch.
Exactly.
In there,
Exactly.
So I want to ask you another question I didn't have written down, but who do the Yard Goats have going into next season that people should keep an eye on as the next big breakout?
Well, the way things work is that we don't know our roster. The Rockies, obviously, they pay the players and the coaches, and we're just responsible for the entertainment here at the ballpark. So we don't have any control on the roster. So things change all the time. We make suggestions. Please send us Brendan back, and because he was one of the big stars in the game. And no, we want him to play here, but we also want him to move. When he packed his bags, we all said, good luck. We'll see you on television. We don't want you to come back because that's not good for Brendan. And he was really great with our fans here. So we hope bigger and better things from Mr. Rogers. But I think one player that we'll see next year, Sam Hilliard, I think there's a chance, although he'll be on the bubble for AAA, but he had a really good first half of the year, made the All-Star team, and then kind of slipped in the second half. Big left-handed hitter, has a really good arm, plays in right field. And I think he'll be a guy, along with Brian Mundell. I think Brian will be back it'll be part of his third season, but he needs to figure some things out with the swing, and he actually had a pretty good finish with us last year. So those are two guys I think that that will be back. Rico Garcia is a pitcher that we saw came up, I would say, in July and pitched so well. He may have even pitched his way out of this league, but I think there's a chance that he probably, because they're so loaded now at the big leagues and then in AAA, so that because the organization is so top-heavy now with talent, that might push him back, which won't hurt him at all. He's still a young kid. He's actually from Honolulu, Hawaii, and pitched great. His dad is from Hartford, so it's a really cool connection there. So I think we'll see him. And then Humphreys is a closer that I think he would probably be a lock to be here next year unless he completely blows people away in spring training. But I'll throw him in there too because he throws 100 miles an hour. He's really cool. He'll go triple digits on the radar in the outfield. He's got an electric fastball. Was leading the California League in saves when he got promoted to Hartford, and then was pretty good. Our closer, Matt Pierpont, was the best, certainly in the Eastern League, maybe in minor league baseball. I think he had the best save percentage. He was outstanding. So there wasn't much opportunities really for Reed Humphreys, and but when he came in, he looked sharp, and then he ended up going down with an injury that really limited his innings like the last 2.5 weeks of the season. So knock on wood, I think he's healthy, and I think that he should be a guy that fans should look for next year. Reed Humphreys, remember that name, because one thing you can't teach is 100-mile-an-hour fastball.
Either you got it or you don't.
That's right.
That's a lot of names to be excited about.
Yeah, it should be fun. I mean,
great.
Again, everything can change at a moment's notice. Guys flying under the radar, some guys that you expect to do well don't, and then others come up and just get it done. So it's one of those cool things where you just never know till it actually happens, and that's the great thing about baseball at the major league level or at the minor league level.
Sure. So last thing before I let you go, I always like to get a recommendation from everybody. So I'll give you a minute to try to sell me on something that you have experienced recently that you think other people would enjoy. I get a lot of books or restaurants, vacation spots, anything from anywhere.
Let's see. We just went to Newport, and my brother has a boat and family in Rhode Island, so we went out to Newport and we just cruised around there. And that's a great spot to go if you haven't been. That Newport's awesome. Especially it's a little bit cool this time of year, but in the summertime we've got a ton of stuff going on. And then we just actually took a recent vacation to Lake George, New York. I mentioned we went up to Lake Placid, but Lake George was a lot of fun. It's about a little over 2 hours from Hartford, and they've got stuff going on. There's ferry rides on the lake, and you can fish, you can swim. There's some pretty cool hotels there, and then you've got Lake Placid was really, really cool. That's about an hour north of that, a little bit better than an hour north, maybe an hour and 15. And to tour that museum where the U.S. Olympic hockey team played, I think was pretty special. Whether you're a sports fan or not, I mean, everyone I think has pride in the United States of America. And what those, as I was explaining to my kids, what those basically college kids did to that professional Russian hockey team it's unbelievable. So I would suggest those are a couple, that's that. I don't get a chance to do too much in the summertime with baseball. We did take a trip to Washington this year. That we were in Bowie, Maryland, and we stay in Annapolis. So my family came down with me. So we did Annapolis, the Naval Academy, and all that stuff was really, really cool. We did take a day and go to the nation's capital. And I mean, obviously, you can't beat D.C. Some great things there. They've got
that's a city unlike anything else.
It really is amazing. There's a cool thing. It's called a newseum. Newseum. Have you been there? So they show all the stuff with the news and how the industry has changed through the years. I thought it was really, really interesting, and the kids got a kick out of it too. So it was those are a couple of places that I certainly would recommend for sure.
Yeah, those are great. Thank you very much. I appreciate you doing this.
Jordan, thanks for having me. It was great.
Thank you.
All right.
Baseball returning to Hartford is pretty great, and it was really awesome getting to speak with Jeff about broadcasting for the team. Big thanks again to the Yard Goats and to Jeff for coming on the show. If you enjoy the show, help spread the word by rating and reviewing on iTunes or your podcast service. And make sure to follow the pod on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, or you can email me directly at tabletostage@gmail.com. If you'd like to get more involved with the show, you can visit patreon.com/tabletostage and help support the show as a stagehand or table leg. Do I have a recommendation of my own this week? Oh, you betcha. So one of my favorite artists, Mark Knopfler, has a new record out called Down the Road Wherever. Mark Knopfler was the frontman in the Dire Straits many moons ago, and his solo career has resulted in some of my absolute favorite music during the past 20 years. He's a legend in the guitar world, and he plays blues, rock, and bluegrass kind of woven into his really distinctive style. So check it out. That's it for now. Until next time, keep creating.